So it is 4:01, so I will go ahead and get us started. Welcome to the Washington Medical Commission's Policy Committee meeting. I'm Amelia Boyd. I'm the organizer for this meeting. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me in the chat. During the comments section of each document, you can either use the raise your hand function or you can put your comments in the chat if you'd like. And then if you have any, like I said, if you have any questions, just reach out to me. And then Mike, you and Christine can take it away.
Okay, thank you all for joining this meeting this afternoon. I'm Christine Blake, a public member and the chair of this committee. My apologies, my camera on this laptop is not working, so I will not, obviously cannot turn it on. I have also been away for about a week and a half, so I have gone through some of these documents. However, I'm going to let Mike go ahead and speak to them as he has more understanding of them at this moment than I do. So, Mike, thank you so much for helping out.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Mike Farrell, Policy Development Manager, and we're going to talk about 3 documents today. We had an interested parties meeting last Friday. That was the first time we tried that, and we had, I think, 1 commission member and a number of staff, and we had discussions about these documents, and we had a lot of feedback, or some feedback about the first one involving social media, and not so much on the last 2. They're rather simpler. So if you don't mind, I'll start with the first one. The Commission has an existing document called Professionalism in Electronic Media. And so we decided that this needed a big update, a lot of revisions, and we changed the name. So this is a document that came to the interested parties meeting last Friday, was revised. We got some feedback from a plastic surgeon in the community who had some ideas on what to put in this. I emailed you his comments, his 2 emails to each of the policy committee members. I hope you were able to take a look at that because we'll go over them. But here is the document. The name has changed to Social Media and Electronic Communications. And it contains a number of recommendations for physicians and PAs to strongly consider when they use social media and other electronic communications. So I welcome any feedback on the language, on the recommendations. This is an area with a lot of different views. And I would like to have a discussion about what you think should be in this, or what language needs to be changed, or what needs to be taken out of it.
Does anybody have any comments that have reviewed this prior to this meeting?
I am Scott Rogers. I'm making some comments in the chat that might be easier than spoken.
Okay, Scott, so you provided some edits, very helpful.
I'm finishing a couple more too. I just thought I'd give those while.
Anyone else have comments? I can go to the plastic surgeon's recommendations if you want.
So I guess I'll just comment. This is a document that I think is essential, necessary, and certainly timely. I'm curious, however, of what kind of feedback there has been regarding the document and or for the commission. Pro, con, concerns. I'm curious. Or maybe this isn't the place or the time to ask that. I was just wondering, if not, when would that be?
It is the time, Mr. Lopez. It's exactly the time. We haven't received a lot of feedback. I'm not sure how many members of the public or the profession have read this. We got some very direct feedback from the plastic surgeon that I mentioned. We had a discussion at the interested parties meeting that was primarily among staff, and public member Yanling Yu provided some really good feedback during that meeting, and subsequent to that, I haven't received feedback from anybody saying this is a bad idea or you're taking the wrong approach. The plastic surgeon that I mentioned has some very specific recommendations on including some things that I wanted to bring up. A couple items that he brought up I put in, but a couple other items I frankly was hesitant to put into this document. But overall, not a lot of feedback.
Okay, thank you. Anything you can share about how staff, what staff's thoughts are?
I'm trying to remember. We did incorporate a lot of the discussion from staff into this document. One of the issues was how should and this was brought up by the plastic surgeon, and then we discussed this last Friday. How should a physician or PA respond, if at all, to an online review by a patient, either positive or negative? And so we spent much of that meeting talking about that very issue. So that's something new that was added. And the recommendation is you really can't respond. You can't provide any personal health information, period. This was one of the issues brought up by the plastic surgeon. His view was if a patient posts a negative review or positive review and discloses the fact that they're a patient and voluntarily puts out their personal health information and makes it public, that opens the door for the physician to essentially do the same. But that's not what the law says. That's not a waiver. Patient can't waive that protection. The patient can, however, consent to having anybody, having the provider disclose personal health information. They can consent to that. So that's why this document talks about never doing that, never responding unless the patient has specifically consented. And frankly, we don't go into exactly how that's done. There are a lot of weeds we can go into in this document. It was just my view, and you can disagree, that going into very specific recommendations can just open up all kinds of doors and lead us down paths we don't want to go down. So I thought sticking with general principles with a few specifics was the best approach.
And I fully and 100% agree.
And we have references at the end, especially regarding plastic surgeons, that are very specific on this topic.
I thought there was some areas that were a little specific that painted us in a corner, but I thought they were reasonable. So it was okay. Yeah, I'm just concerned about the slippery slopes and the unintended consequences. But because social media is fraught with so much difficulty right now, and like most of the electronic world, there's the good and the bad. So I guess we are having to create a document that at least gives us, and I'm assuming the intent was some guidelines and some principles to work with, because we can't cover it all. So
Right.
thank you for the work.
And if there's a place where you think we've painted ourselves into a corner, let me know.
All right, thank you.
It is a combination of general principles with a few specifics.
Yeah, I liked the content. I thought it was a great job with the content. I've just, made a few wordsmithing things, nothing substantive.
Thanks, Scott.
I saw your comments, Scott, in the chat where you thought licensee should be practitioner.
It's just a
Is that-
suggestion.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying if the licensee is all through the document, should we change it? Or it looks like Micah's typing something too. Maybe in response to that.
Sorry, not in response to that, something different.
Oh, okay. So if the word is used throughout or just in that one place?
I think it was just in that one place. I think it referred to practitioner or entity, but I could be wrong. I spent less than an hour preparing for this meeting, and I trust that Michael will, Mr. Farrell, I'm sorry, will
Mhm.
take the suggestions as comments and
Okay.
make the right decision. He knows what the right decision is better than I.
Thanks. Amelia, is there anybody in the on the outside that is wanting to respond to comment?
There's no hands raised, but I mean,
Okay.
you can open the floor for sure.
Okay.
I do want to go over, it's Dr. Wheeler, who's the plastic surgeon who provided a number of comments.
Okay.
And because he provided them, I think I have an obligation to bring them up, make you aware of them.
I look at those.
Oh, okay. Okay, so he says we need to be more specific. Had a conversation with him on the phone. He was very helpful and insightful, and he's in this area. And he told me he didn't like social media, but he feels he has to engage in it as a plastic surgeon, and has some ideas. For example, he says we should put limits on advertising, that you can't advertise that you're board certified unless it's an ABMS approved specialty or subspecialty. He says there are a number of cosmetic surgeons out there who are not board certified in plastic surgery, who are violating these general principles, I should say. And he thinks that this should be addressed in the document. I should mention that we have one of the definitions of unprofessional conduct in our statute is false or misleading advertising. I should also mention that California has a rule. He says the same rule is passed by California. What he's referring to is a rule in California that you cannot advertise that you're board certified unless you're certified by an ABMS board or by a board approved by the California Medical Board. We don't have that provision. We actually discussed it a long time ago and decided not to do that. If you wanted to do that, I think you'd have to do it by rule or by statute. So my own opinion is that this is well outside the scope of this document.
Heather, I think you can unmute yourself.
Oh, I can.
Perfect.
I just had a comment on the specialty issue. There is a lot of dental boards across the country have a specialty representation and advertising rule, and they are pretty routinely being struck down by the FTC, is challenging them for antitrust violations. So it is a trend that is going away to restrict sort of how you can advertise, because the FTC has been really cracking down on that against state boards, at least in the dental realm. But I think it kind of is analogous to specialty board representation. So just something to think about if you do decide to go down that route, which I wouldn't recommend, but if you did, there are some substantial issues that we need to look at.
Thanks, Heather. And aside from the advertising issues, which I think he has 3 different ideas about, he did ask us to modify the provision about not posting personal information, which I think I already addressed. He also talks about not recommending that physicians and PAs not offer remuneration to incentivize a patient to allow the use of their information or photographs, or putting up positive reviews or removing negative reviews, which is in there. But I think we added some language to, thanks to Dr. Wheeler, we added some language to that provision.
Mike, I've got a question on item 7. I may be just misreading this, but do not post anything on social media or on electronic communications that you would not note in a patient's chart. That, to me, that reads a little confusing. It seems like you would say the opposite of do not post anything in social media that you would note in a patient's chart. Or is the intent different?
Yeah, the intent's a little different. I can see how you can interpret it that way. This came directly from, I think, the Nova Scotia recommendations. And I think the idea was, no, actually, I think this came from our first iteration, the existing policy. I think that's where this came from, Micah. The idea is that you would not post something that you wouldn't also note in the patient's chart. I think that's where it came from. So I was not involved in the drafting of that, but I think you were, if you remember back to 2014.
I don't recall.
Okay. If this is confusing, we can remove it. Maybe that section should be taken out, or that the first part of that sentence should be taken out.
Maybe just the first part of the sentence.
So do not post anything on social media or in electronic communications that you would hesitate to explain to patients, their family members, your colleagues, news media, or the WMC. Leave out any reference to the patient's chart.
Yeah, do not post anything or an electronic communication that you would not note in a patient's chart or hesitate to explain. Yeah. Yeah. It's too bad that we have to be so explicit on some of these things now with the way social media is. They have to word it so in this way. Thank you.
So here's what we have now.
Okay.
Do not do anything which you would hesitate to note in a patient's chart or explain to patients. Blah, blah.
Thank you, Amelia.
It's the not part that was throwing me off.
The not part?
Yeah, so let's see. Do not post anything. It's that you would not note in a patient's chart. And that's what's kind of throwing me off there. It's like, don't post anything on social media that you would note on a patient's chart or have difficulty explaining to patient, family member, WMC, news media. Because it seems to me at that point, it's explicit that if it's something that you would put in a patient's chart, it is not something that needs to go on social media.
Correct.
Yeah, maybe the example with the chart is I think I understand the intent here, and it is not to give any advice that you wouldn't have stated that's your advice on the medical record, but it's probably whether or not that's appropriate for social media. I don't know.
So the one we had before, Maya, do not do anything, if we just reworded it to say, do not post anything on social media that you would hesitate, that you would not document in a patient's chart, and then whatever the rest of that sentence says. So it's pretty much what you're saying in the new sentence language that you put in. Do not post anything on social media or in an electronic. So we just expanded it a little bit. It looks like.
Yeah, somebody recommended adding that language about the patient's chart.
I agree with that.
You agree with taking it out?
No, I agree
Chris,
with
or-
leaving it there. To well, you shouldn't be posting what you have in a patient's record anyway. It's private. I mean, it's not something that you would post, well, hopefully post anyway as a physician. Here's what I put in that patient's medical record, or this is what, or use something that you put in that patient's medical record, I guess. So I like that wording of that you would post. I like I can't read the new one because it's little. But I think I think it's fine as written. Or do not post anything on social media or any electronic communication, maybe, or on any electronic communication that you would not note in a patient's chart or hesitate to explain their family members or colleagues, the news media or the WMC. I think it's good. I mean, that's pretty straightforward, isn't it? Don't do anything you wouldn't do A, B, C, D.
Yeah, that's the intent. But I think Mike is raising the issue that it could be read the opposite way.
So when you have the or in the middle of the sentence, you're talking about two separate application clauses.
Right.
And so when you just read to the or, do not post anything on social media or electronic communications that you would not note in the patient's chart, period. So as I read that says anything that you would is conceivably part of it, and then you add in the or to consider or hesitate to explain and everything else. So I think if you just eliminate the word not, you cover what you're trying to get.
Got it. So you just want to take that little word not out of there. Do not post anything that you would note.
Right. Because I think
Okay.
while we all think it's common sense that anything in the patient record shouldn't go on social media,
Correct.
I think that's what this clause is trying to get at.
Yeah, I think if you take the not out, it would work. Do not post anything on social that you would note. Yeah. What does everybody think if you take the not out of there?
I think the purpose is different.
Okay.
Because of the first sentence. We're talking about maintaining professional boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
We're not talking about disclosing personal health information. That comes later. This is about using good judgment in deciding what to post. And if you're going to post something that you would never note in a patient's chart, then you could question whether I should post this. It's really a general statement, but I think it's causing enough confusion that we could just remove it.
Or if you change note to document, would that make a difference? That you would not document in a patient's chart or hesitate to explain? Instead of note, but document, would that make that you would not document in a patient's chart or hesitate to?
Well,
Yeah.
I think the other thing to consider is just the instant access to notes in EMRs now. And does that change what this does? As far as now, basically almost anything that you put in there, the patient is seeing near real time due to federal legislation. So do we need to reassess this under that lens as well?
Well, I think that, well, the patient can see it, but the whole world shouldn't have to read it, kind of, the patient looking at their own record, but that we don't want the practitioner posting it anywhere.
Sure.
Yeah. So it's limited who looks in the patient portal, the patient hopefully, or whatever family member they allow. So how about if you just change note to document with that?
Yeah, and the whole thing could be, do not post anything on social media or in electronic communications unless you would document it in a patient's chart or explain it to patients or members, colleagues, and news media or the WMC. I don't know that that's the right wordsmith, but I think that's the intent, is do not post anything on social media or in electronic communications unless you would document it in a patient's chart or explain it to patients, their family members, their colleagues, the news media, or the WMC.
That really opens it up. Yeah, that's,
In light of Mike's clarification, I'll just withdraw my comment and we can move along.
mhm. I think I like it. I think maybe just change note to document, otherwise it's good with me. What about everybody else?
Mr. Farrell, could I hear from you again, what your thoughts are on this?
My thoughts, at Mr. Lopez, were that since this little clause, I don't think this adds a lot of value, frankly, versus how much confusion it can cause. That this clause about documenting in patient's chart, is really it's not that useful to the reader. They're not going to. It's really about using good judgment. And that sentence before, and then this sentence about hesitating to explain to patients, their family members, colleagues, news media, WMC, really brings it home that you need to use good judgment in posting on social media. And a physician who posts a questionable video should think, if I post this, can I explain this to the Seattle Times? Can I explain this to the Washington Medical Commission? Can I explain this to patients? That's a pretty good test. And that's what this says. The documentation issue, I think, is not very important and it's confusing.
So in other words, would I be able to defend why I put that on in social media?
Yes, in short, yes.
Yeah.
I'm fine changing the word no to document and letting it go.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's that important.
Yeah, I'm okay with it. And that way, how about everybody else?
are we assuming if, so let's look at this a little bit differently. If that sentence were to be taken out, removed,
Mhm.
can we, with some degree of certainty, consider or think that the practitioner has enough judgment to be able to understand the intent of that sentence without having the sentence in there? I pose that as a general question to all.
You mean, would it just be something that you would think a provider would know just?
Inherently know
Inherently?
that.
Yeah,
Inherently, should a provider, a physician or PA inherently know that, I shouldn't be doing this.
no, I can tell you that I've had cases where we've had that happen and we've had to pull the provider in. So, somebody once said, I don't know where it came from, but write your policies like you're speaking to I don't know what grader. So that it's pretty, as clear as you can be and plain as you can be.
Fifth or sixth grader is usually what
Sixth
our
grader,
target is.
okay, thank you, yeah, so we might get it, but then the person who's reading it, will read it, everybody's gonna read it differently anyway. We're gonna probably have providers who's, well, I thought that meant this. I mean, it's either way, it's gonna be, they're gonna look at it any way they see it and interpret it that way and defend it that way if we have to talk to somebody about it. Um, so what's the thoughts? Leave it?
I like your suggestion, Ms. Blake, of changing note to document and leaving it as is.
Okay. And honestly, I'm not sure how many people are gonna read this word for word anyway.
Yeah, but their
And
lawyers
follow
will.
it.
Their lawyers will.
Yes, the lawyers will. And so lawyer on the panel, on the committee, thought if somebody came to you and said, well, this is what it says, so that's why I posted this. Or also, we have the right here for some more other additional input.
Yeah, I see. This is Heather. So I see sort of both sides when you say don't post it unless it's, something you would post it. It kind of reads in the alternate, that, oh, well, then if it is in the something I would document, then I could post it. But I think read in context with the rest of the document where it specifically says don't post anything without specific consent. I think you need to read it all together, but read in isolation, it does sort of cause some confusion. So I don't know, for what it's worth.
I personally would like to leave it, give the our licensees as much direction as possible when there may be a lapse in good judgment or boundary. Which might happen. Who knows?
Yep. Anybody on the outside, Amelia, raising hands or?
No, there are no hands raised right now.
So should we go with that and move on?
You
I'm gonna
have my
take that
vote.
as-
You have my vote to
I was
accept it.
gonna say, I'm gonna take that as a yes.
Okay.
Okay. So in number 5, there where you're just, there just needs to be a little wordsmith. Do not offer a patient an incentive to a patient. No,
No.
never mind. I'm seeing it now, to post a positive review or to, no, never mind. Withdraw. The comment. Do not
I
offer
thought
a patient an incentive to a patient, or do not offer an incentive to a patient.
I would take out the second
Yeah.
to a patient.
Yeah, okay.
So number 4, we deal with advertising. We crossed that line that I talked about before from trying to provide guidance on social media to now talking about advertising, marketing. I'm having second thoughts about including that.
I would argue that it needs to be included. I mean, it's not that we're
Yeah.
trying to extend the reach of social media. We're responding to what practitioners have done on social media and for what complaints we've received related to that.
Yeah. I
Mr.
think
Farrell,
it should.
what's your reservation? Tell me more.
It's just the general idea. Dr. Wheeler had a number of specific recommendations on advertising, and my thought was advertising is outside the scope of this document. And then I'm just reading this now. I mean, I put this together a little while ago. I got this from somewhere. It's not my language. It might be from Nova Scotia. It could be from the Federation of State Medical Boards. So I put it in, and now I'm wondering, all we're talking about there is marketing and advertising. The advice is good, recommendation's good, but are we now moving into advertising? I just have a slight reservation, and I think we can keep it.
Well, I don't think the commission's moving into advertising. I think the commission is being very explicit in saying, look, if you're going to advertise, just be transparent. Note your conflicts of interest, and you and I and all of us are well aware that misrepresentation of training, expertise, and credentials is sort of endemic in some of these things. So I think it seems to me that this is a line that's essential, but maybe not. I mean, just seems to me.
And Mike, to address your concerns and potentially FTC concerns, I think the issue there is selecting one organization and elevating it over another. And that's not what number 4 is. It's simply saying be truthful about whatever your credentials may be. Not, you may not advertise yourself as board certified unless you're ABMS certified, which gets in the whole plastic surgery, cosmetic surgery board thing.
Sure.
On number 6, I wasn't sure if you had considered expanding that a little bit more based off of complaints we've received, such as, don't threaten to shoot people who you're yelling at on social media, or, invite them to your home so you can fight, or live stream insurrection type activities. those sorts of things.
So that behavior sounds so extreme.
Yeah,
That's the kind of person who wouldn't be reading this and abiding by it.
That's true.
That's my initial thought.
yeah, they sure wouldn't be. So they cyberbully?
I don't know, I mean, cyberbullying, to my mind, and maybe I've got an outdated definition, is when you're selecting an individual or a group or a member of a group that's an individual, and you're systematically harassing them through a number of different means, but via electronic media. And so some of the complaints we've received in the past, I'm not sure I would say that amounted to cyberbullying.
Mm-hmm.
So
Communicate and engage in social media in personal and professional settings with civility and respect for others. Do we need the do not engage in disruptive behaviors such as cyberbullying?
We could include a link to the cyber stalking statute that includes that, which is a misdemeanor or a gross misdemeanor in Washington State.
that'd be nice.
I'd like that.
Mm-hmm.
I can do that.
Okay.
Well, we have 17 minutes left.
I know. And we have 2 more documents, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
Although
sorry to delay us. I just have 2 questions. One was in the chat about, since this is a guidance document, do we need to shift from do nots to practitioners or licensees, whichever nomenclature you go with, should not, since it's guidance?
So if this is guidance, do we not have any teeth with this document? It's more just a here's what you probably should or should not do. But if you do it, this is just a guide for you. That we can't say, well, you violated this document.
right. It's just guidance. It's meant to be friendly. It's meant to be helpful,
Okay.
telling them what they should and should not do. It can't be used. Well, pretty much can't be used in a disciplinary hearing or as a basis for a statement of charges. You have a legal basis for those charges.
Okay. So
You raise a fair point, Micah. I just think simple, direct language, I'm just trying to go with that. If you say should not, then you have to have a subject there, a practitioner should not, and then every sentence begins with practitioner should or should not,
yeah.
which I don't favor. It's fine.
Sure.
I
Tend to agree.
just like starting with the
Yeah.
verb, maintain, do not.
Fair enough. Just wanted to raise the question.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers, for the cyber stalking RCW.
Oh, you know what? And I just, when I clicked over there and looked at the statute, they just this last session removed cyber stalking and cyber harassment. So there's another RCW, the old cyber stalking statute. And by old, I mean, I guess the one from 6 days ago, included harassment in cyberspace and everything. So I can send that. Mr. Farrell probably already knows what it is, but I'm happy to send a link to the other one as well.
Yeah, please do. Thanks.
As they've changed cyber stalking to really mean stalking, which was a problem in the past. People would be charged with cyber stalking and say, well, I didn't stalk them, I just threatened to kill them.
Oh, God.
I'll
So the-
find it, Mr. Farrell, and if we don't have it by the end of the meeting, I'll email it to you.
Okay. So the next question is, on the 14th, or do you want to do more work?
I'm sorry, what was that?
So the policy committee has to decide whether to recommend this document and maybe with subsequent changes for approval at when the commission meets in its business
Okay.
meeting on July 14th, or send it back for more work. Note that even if it's adopted on July 14th, this document can be brought back for further discussion and review by the policy committee and adjusted at any time.
Okay, I have a feeling there'll probably be some comments from folks at the business meeting for this document, with this document, so I would bring it and that's my opinion, and have them take a look at it, because my guess is that with this particular document where we even kind of harangued over it for a while, almost the meeting here, there'll probably be some other folks that have some opinions.
So, Mr. Farrell, to your point, we can accept it as written with the caveat that if we've accepted it and as written, that we can now move it forward and it can be brought back at any time for any revisions. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, and I should have mentioned at the beginning, I think this wasn't this revised or accepted last year? Well, I'm not seeing that. Anyway, this is before you because of a case in front of panel A
Mhm.
that
Oh.
raised an issue that was not addressed by our current guideline. And so panel A said when they were done discussing, said, let's amend our current social media policy guideline to incorporate this aspect. Had to do with videos.
Wow.
So that's why it's in front of you. So if you get another case, and who knows what the future holds, but if you get another case involving some aspect of on this topic that's not addressed, it could happen at the August meeting. You can say, let's add this, and I will bring it back. So I can make the changes. I can send them to you tomorrow. You can tell me, and that includes all of the changes recommended by Mr. Rogers, and you can tell me what I missed and what I didn't, and then we can polish up the document for the business meeting.
Okay.
I like it.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, the next document, panel consent agenda. This is a lot more straightforward. This is just a routine 4-year review. It doesn't come about because of a recent case or anything. It's just a 4-year review of the procedure for the panel consent agenda with some very minor modifications that you can see there. I did run this by the people who are involved in this process, who've made some changes, but it's pretty much as is. The process hasn't changed a whole lot in the past 4 years.
I didn't see anything objectionable.
Mhm. No, neither did I. This one I did get to read all the way through. I didn't either.
Okay. Is this ready for the business meeting?
Mhm.
Okay. All right, last document. So the background of this one, again, this is a up to 4-year review. I didn't have any changes to recommend. The commission has opioid prescribing rules, and
Mhm.
one of the rules says that when you're prescribing opioids for chronic pain, if you hit the 120 milligram MED, you're required to get a consult with a pain specialist. There are a number of exemptions to that. One of them is that you do not need to, the provider does not need to get a pain consult with a pain specialist if they are a pain specialist. And then there's a whack, and I think that's right in front of you, saying you are a pain specialist if you meet one of the 5 criteria. And the 4th criteria, credential and pain management by an entity approved by the commission or an allopathic physician. There's no further explanation of how that process works, how the commission approves an entity to credential a prescriber in pain management. And so that's what this document does. It was adopted 4 years ago. It provides the process at the bottom of that page. If you scroll down just a little bit, Amelia, there's 5 steps to go through, or actually not 5 steps, but the entity has to provide the commission with information on 5 criteria. And then the commission reviews it and decides whether to approve it. This procedure's never been put into use. Nobody's applied. But the commission back in 2019 approved the American Board of Pain Medicine. If you scroll down a little more to the end, you'll see the list of approved entities. The American Board of Pain Medicine is an approved entity. So no controversy here.
It looks good to me. Anybody else? Any other comments?
Chronic pain has become an ongoing problem since and has increased since 19. So
Mhm.
clearly there are more and more practitioners who may not be board certified
Mhm.
as pain specialists. However, they're managing chronic pain. So whether that's an MD or a PA. So, however, as I look at these 5 points, A through E, most, if not all of them that I'm aware of, fit into this. So I think we're safe.
Mhm. Yeah. From a hospital perspective as well.
From a hospital credentialing perspective, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry.
I agree.
Yeah.
This one looks okay.
Any other comments, or everybody okay with this one?
Just a couple of wordsmith suggestions I put in the chat, but I'm fine with the way.
Okay. So then I'm going to. No, since we've had that little pause for comment and there aren't any, I'll go with okay as is, and with the comments that you put in for some wordsmithing to move forward.
Amelia, I'm having computer issues and I can't access the chat. Is there a way to save it for me?
Yeah, I can just copy it and send it to you, but Scott, have you already put it in the chat? Because I don't see it.
I don't see it either.
Yeah, let me.
Did you put it in way up ahead?
Yeah, it's way up ahead.
Yeah.
I kind of dumped all my stuff.
Oh, I see. Panel consent
Yeah.
agenda. Okay.
Yeah.
Never
I didn't
mind.
think Everybody wanted to waste time with wordsmithing and stuff, and half of them are annoying little suggestions anyway.
Okay, approving entities.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I'll get these sent to Mr. Farrell.
Thank you. Did this time work okay for everybody today?
Did
Moving
for-
it to, okay. Me too. Any more, anybody from the outside, Amelia?
No, there's no hands raised. There's nothing further in the chat from anyone.
Okay. Well, then I believe we're done.
Yes.
3 minutes to spare. Thanks, everyone. I'll adjourn the meeting.
Thank you.
Have a good
Thank you.
rest of your evening. Sorry, I can't wave at you. I'm waving.
Take care.